We are live. Good evening. This is Rob, co-host of the Xtreme Movie Show, and tonight with me is the Dr. V on Kicking It. Good evening, Doctor.
How's it going?
Good. So, on this action review show that we're doing right now, we're taking a look at another Chuck Norris movie called A Force of One from 1979. So, I think it's a good film overall. I kind of liked it. I think some people think there should be a ton of action in it, but it's kind of like the movie we talked about last week with The Octagon with Chuck Norris. It's a film first that has martial arts in it, and whereas The Octagon was actually about terrorism that just happened to have ninjas and camps and everything, so it's pretty forward thinking at its time. This one is basically just kind of like a cop story, with them chasing some drugs and with a little bit of martial arts thrown in. But this is like the big one that Chuck Norris really got super popular on, and it made some great money in this and that too. So my first question for you is, had you ever even heard about it or seen it?
No, I watched the movies you hear the most are the ones from '85 and up.
Right.
Those are the big names. You really don't hear about the '70s or '80s unless it's something really big like Rocky.
Hmm.
No, like as I was going back and I was looking at like the movies come out in different years. Like '82 was the big year for all the big movies coming out.
Yes.
'81 was still kind of like the drama, like '70s melodramas. I mean, there was some action kung fu, but it was like few and far between.
Yeah, and I think
But
too that with a lot of times Chuck Norris people, of course, think of Walker, Texas Ranger, or Invasion USA. But to me, the early '80s was a real serious martial arts pseudo ninja craze. Even though the martial arts are popular in the '70s, so Chuck Norris getting in on the floor there right before everything started, I think really was perfect timing on his part. And he's legit. Well, when you see him in some of the fight sequences in these films, you're like, okay, yeah, he's definitely got the goods. It's got like a late '70s feel to it because you can still hear some of the funky kind of guitar and the percussion. It's got a great soundtrack. It's a Hollywood score with real
or
musicians.
just the way he dresses, his hairstyle is longer too.
He's got the wide labels of the '70s. Those were fading out into the early '80s, but he still has that helmet bowl cut hair thing and his mustache and everything too. But there's a
Yep.
really cool scene where uh, let's talk about it from the beginning. Actually, from what I understand in this movie, what they wanted to try to do was make sure Chuck Norris did not have a romantic interest in it because it was still early in his career, and they wanted to focus on just the action and being kind of tough and gritty. So they gave him a black son as a character. So is happening is he's preparing for this big fight against this goon, and nobody can find where all these drugs are coming from. They think it's a karate killer. They're asking Chuck for
Yep.
his help. There's some pretty interesting scenes. So some of the language is a little dated, like it's from a '70s cop show before into the '80s kind of retrofitted some of that stuff. But you know, I liked it. I don't think it's as good as the Octagon or as enjoyable or as neat with the ninja stuff and the shots, but I think it's still pretty good. But do you remember anything about it early on, scene wise, before we get to the end?
Um. Well, I just know that they hire. It's funny that the cops would hire like a karate champion. They go after like martial arts, like killer, serial killer.
Yep. Yep.
So it's like that is like what kind of what kind of like out of the box thinking is that? It's like, okay, well, we're gonna just get a you're a karate champion, so we'll just make a story around the martial arts. A lot of the movies don't do that much anymore. You don't see the plots like that,
Yes.
Like,
Well, I was going to say
so it's
too,
like
we were talking about the plots. I mean, that's a perfect way to fit it around Chuck Norris, don't you think?
exactly. Well, yeah, he's the black belt guy back then.
Well,
Jackie Chan was still starting out. He wasn't as known, and who do you have? You had Bruce Lee.
right,
You know,
right. Eric Breen's hopped in channel there. He says, "I'm a force of one in the chat." That's nice, and you're the only one in here right now, which is
exactly.
pretty awesome. I know Eric likes some of these movies here too. I mean, some of the things that I wrote down when I was watching this recently was just stuff that stood out to me. I thought, man, you don't see them in movies these days. So, like, for example, there were some blaxploitation type movies in the 70s, and there's one guy in there, his name is Ron O'Neal, I believe is the actor's name. He played a guy called Superfly in it, and he's got these killer mutton chops, and so immediately you think, oh, this is going to be the bad guy. And you're kind of like half right, because there's a scene where they can't find out who this karate killer is, and so Chuck Norris's son is Charlie, the black kid. He's actually following this Superfly guy, and he's following up to a home in the Hollywood Hills or whatever. And so, of course, you know, he's like an informant. He's in the bad guy chain, and they're sitting there drinking wine or whatever, and they're snorting coke by the pond and all that. And of course, Charlie gets busted. And of course, the big other goon comes out and says, "Hey, I'll give you one chance. All you gotta do is get by me." And then they have this fight, and he hip tosses him in the pond, and then he like just chokes him out and kills him. And you're like, damn. But apparently this movie, I'm glad I saw the unrated version, because apparently they edit out all the coke sniffing and the neck breaking sounds, because they would have gotten rated X.
I know. Yeah. I mean, well, back then, you know, it really didn't do that much. Nowadays, you see that in a PG-13 movie.
True, but then it would have gotten an X rating, which means it would have gotten shown, but at least it would have been extreme, which is another reason why I wanted to cover it.
Always a silver lining.
Well, I think the movie is pretty straightforward. I mean, there's just a little bit of action in there. I think a smart play in this movie was showing Chuck actually in the studio. He's training the cops who are working together on their team to find these drugs, just some basic like disarm techniques. They have a very strong female character in there too. They don't necessarily get romantically involved.
No.
But it's good just to watch Chuck working with kids and, you know, working with his co-hosts like that. And it seems very natural. And I thought them having that in there early on, it gives Chuck a little bit of the rub, from because that's his natural strength is coaching and teaching and being in the arts. So the big scene is he's walking to meet one of the female cop, and he's parking behind this restaurant. He's getting ready to go in, and he's attacked by, it looks like a ninja guy, and they're fighting, and Chuck's almost getting his ass beat, and then some guys are coming out the back door, and they stop, and there's this like zoom in on the bad dude, and Chuck just sees like his eyes. It's like a ninja mask, and then the dude runs off. So he then finds out his son just got whacked, and that's when he has the big thing like, I said I wasn't going to help. I said I wasn't going to get involved, but whoever did this, wish they were dead, or something like that. And that's like, yeah, right, you know, he's on. So I liked it, because right there, that's the third act, and once it gets there, it hits a home run.
I was reading about the guy who wrote the screenplay for it, Ernest Twitty or Tidy Man. He wrote the screenplay for that, and he also wrote for Shaft and The French Connection.
Yeah,
two big movies.
Good movies.
He said he originally said that this was like his. He considered it was his least successful effort as craftsmanship. You know, he's like I only wrote it to buy my mother a house, and it turned out to be one of his best hits.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing too, is you just don't know. Like the Octagon one, you know, we don't really get into a lot of the behind the scenes and the politics of movies, the how they're made, because we just want to talk about the movie itself. But that was written by a woman.
Yeah. Critics were calling this a farce of one, and though it did manage to gross over $20 million domestically.
Yeah,
so they're eating their words.
Monster hit, exactly. I mean, micro budget, and after that, it was just lights out for anybody that got in Chuck Norris's path.
Even back in it was his 1981 when did this come? 1980.
This was 79.
79, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So even back then, the critics didn't know what they're talking about. You know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and again, you know, it got like average ratings for the most part, but fans like it, and he's got charisma. And I think the other thing too is when you have somebody like Chuck Norris, who at the time was known as a karate guy and trying to make it in movies, anybody else that's working with him, it's just like any potential up and comer. You want to give your best effort, because if they make a force of 2 or a force of 3,
see, another reason they made this movie was good, because you had Jennifer O'Neill in it.
Who?
Jennifer O'Neill.
Yes, she's the strong, independent cop character, the non-romantic lead, shall we say.
The hot Brazilian.
Eric's saying that you should have covered that. We covered at the beginning, so pay attention. You got to be quick. The last part of the movie, though, I think is pretty neat, and it tidies up very well. Once it gets to the end, there's no big monologue; it just ends. But what happens is, you know, after it looks like everybody's got a turtleneck or whatever, you know, Chuck Norris is like, he goes to his big fight. His son's dead, and he's fighting the dude, and it's a pretty good battle. And he's watching, and there's a moment. What's that?
They're in the boxing ring.
Yes,
the final fight, right? Yes,
exactly.
which
And
is
then,
I would not expect that from that movie, a boxing ring.
well, it's it's a karate ring at the time, so
Yeah, yeah.
they're having their fight.
I would expect this movie to be like Nighthawks, where like they're just doing everything and like outside the ring, a ring like that. It would have been like done, settled on the street, a back alley. You
Oh,
know?
but it does. And we're getting to that. This is the final fight officially, you know. So
Yeah,
they're fighting, and then there's a pause while they're fighting between rounds. And then all of a sudden you get that exact same shot, that little zoom in on the bad dude's face. And Chuck Norris realizes this is the guy that killed my son. And because they
yeah,
play the same music and everything too. The
yep,
dude kind of panics and runs out. So Chuck Norris, he's got his tracksuit on, he's shirtless. He runs after the dude. The dude gets in the car, starts driving away, and Chuck is like hanging out from the outside of the door, and he's trying to choke him out while holding on to the steering wheel in his tracksuit. And then it's on. He chases them. They end up in like the hills, and then they have their big fight there at the end. And of course, Chuck wins, chokes the guy out, was getting ready to break his neck, and he just stops at the last second. The chick that you're talking about comes up there, says, "No, no, no, don't
yep,
do
yep.
it, stop." And that's pretty much it for the movie. But overall, it's not a martial arts film. It's a cop film that has martial
Yeah,
arts in it.
exactly. And this,
Christy Miller's
and
channel,
I wonder
LOL
if
number two. What are you LOLing about, Christy? Tell us. Chuck Norris? Yeah, I love
I
him.
I I wonder if this is where the Steven Seagal movies got their basis from. Just being a guy, a cop, and just kicking butt, martial arts. That is the basis setup. And they saw. I mean, they must have thought that, oh, this is a great formula if it's going to sell well. I mean, I'm not sure how well some like Under Siege and like Fire Down Below were for Seagal, but I mean, it created the way for Jean-Claude Van Damme. Chuck Norris,
Yes.
Bruce Lee.
Yes, absolutely. And that was one thing we had mentioned before with some of the 80s streams is that you had all these different varieties and you could work to each person's strengths for it. So no one's going to sit there and say, Chuck's going to get the best, acting Oscar or any of that kind of stuff, but he has a presence about him.
No,
He's got some stuff that people want to see. And so you work to his strengths and there's nothing wrong with that.
well, I like the fact that he's the kind of guy, even at 71 years old, or 70, even in his 70s, he can still kick the crap out of you. he's not getting some guy like, oh, I can't do the martial arts. I'm gonna get somebody to come and do the stunts for me.
Yeah.
I like to actually use a martial artist, and that's why I liked what's her name from Lady Bloodfight, Amy Johnson. She did her own moves, and so did other girls. They didn't require a stunt double.
Yeah, for those of you in channel, Eric, you may have heard about it. Christy, if you're new and haven't heard it yet, we had did a Bright Burn review, but we also included a movie called Lady Bloodfight with Amy Johnson. It's kind of almost like a Jean-Claude Van Damme type movie. Was it Bloodsport we were saying, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's pretty good. And it's like her and Scott Adkins, obviously, they're two people that come to my mind when it comes to martial arts these days, and maybe Tony Jaa a little bit, although I don't know if he's hit it huge over here, but he's done some very, very watchable things as far as his physical skill. That's quite impressive to me. And it's Chuck Norris. What can you say? I mean, he actually did this movie, then he did the Octagon, then he got into several things more before he turned to complete action star with the guns and everything too. But yeah, definitely watching his films, it brought back some memories. Just seeing all the turtlenecks, all the flag collars. I mean, just everything going, the disco sound and music track. But it's still a solid film. It's pretty entertaining. You get what you want. There's not a lot of fluff to it. There's enough of a plot going on where the pacing doesn't really drag or anything. It's still probably a lot better than a lot of things coming out today.
Yep.
Yeah, for me, I liked it. I know it sounds like you weren't as high on it as I was.
Not as really. Like I said, I went up at Delta Force, and then going back to some of these is like you're going Octagon. You're the slow pace again.
Mm-hmm.
I love the high intense octane action. It doesn't really have the plot. I just want people getting shot, and I want Chuck Norris kicking people in the face. That's all I want. Spinning around with the Uzi doesn't hit anything else but the people.
And in chat, Christy Miller saying that saw Brightburn, it was okay. Yeah, we thought Brightburn was okay. Unfortunately, it's bombing. It might get a sequel made, maybe if it makes enough there too. So, yeah. Well, everybody, that pretty much wraps it up for the night. We're just trying to debut a new show here on the Xtreme Movie Show channel, an action one that we just want to do a couple of Chuck Norris movies, some martial arts, get some people used to some of these quick reviews. If you guys have any particular 80s type action film that you'd like us to take a look at and review, by all means, leave a comment down below. We'd be more interested in checking it out. We're always debating on which ones to work on next. I do know that we're going to probably do another Amy Johnston one here in a couple weeks. She gave us a shout out, which is much appreciated too. And some of the people that worked with her also are following a little bit. So it's kind of a small world when you start talking action movies, but damn, there's nothing like seeing just regular people kicking the shit out of each other and slapping around and everything else there instead of guns. It never gets old. It never gets tiring.
That's what made the 80s great. You had the guys walking away from the explosion, you know, you had the guns, the grenades everywhere. It's just like cheesy plot lines, but man, was it great to watch though.
Yeah, that's Commando. Eric saying in channel, I want a Delta Force of One. I like that title. Well, if you guys haven't seen it, I tweeted out what we were doing tonight, and I put in the original trailer for it. And I just have to say this. Anytime, I forget the guy's name that was doing the voiceovers for these trailers back in the 70s and 80s, it just makes you want to see it, because there's such great lines as, it starts off with a routine search and ends with a trail of bodies. I mean, how can you not want to see a movie? You don't get that.
Die Hard. Look at Die Hard, man. Same thing. One man, you know, versus
Okay, everybody. Before we say goodnight to Dr. V, any final thoughts?
Stay extreme. Take your vitamins and keep kicking it.
Keep on kicking it. Have a good night, everybody. Commando's going to get its own stream, Eric, but trust me, okay? Trust but verify, as Reagan would say, who just won the Chin of the Week, by the way. Be looking out for that here soon, too. So for Doctor, myself, Englentine, everybody else involved here on the Xtreme Movie Show, have a good night.